Hi all and welcome back to my channel where I cover all things tech. And also welcome to all of my new subscribers from a short video that I posted last week about the durability testing of this iPhone 15 Pro. That video really blew up to say the least. And today we are going to talk about the big one, my long-ish term review of the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So I've been using this phone since launch over the past few weeks, and during that time, let's just say that this phone has been absolutely riddled with controversy. In fact, I don't remember an iPhone with as many publicized issues since the iPhone 6 Plus with Bendgate, or even the iPhone 4 with the "you're holding it wrong" reception issues. Not only have the 15 Pro models been criticized for overheating issues, with some people saying that it gets so hot that it burns their hands, but people have also questioned its durability despite the much publicized titanium frame. And some people are also calling it out for performance issues like freezing, among other concerns like sometimes when you plug a power bank into the phone will charge the power bank instead of the other way around. Yep. During this time, Apple has released the 17.0.3 update that attempted to address some of these issues, namely the overheating. So with all of this controversy, do I think that this is an iPhone to avoid? Would I suggest that you skip this generation and wait until next year to upgrade, or even just buy an older model? Well, that is the question that I hope to answer in this very long video. But before we go on, I would really appreciate it if you were to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, and also press on the notification bell if you would like to be notified every time I upload. And now that we've done that, let's head on into the review. So the lead up to the iPhone 15 was arguably one of the most exciting lead ups to any iPhone that I can recall since the iPhone 10 possibly. Not only was the A17 processor rumored to be built on the world's first 3nm process, which in theory should lead to far improved performance and efficiency, especially exciting after the Huawei 7nm debacle, but it was also rumored to get a titanium frame, which would solve one of my main issues of the iPhone 14 Pro models, their rather lardy weight. But there were plenty of other interesting rumors too. There was the switch to USB-C from Lightning, which I'm still personally getting used to, but overall it is a net good. There was also the action button that was to replace the iconic ringer switch, the world's thinnest bezels, a more rounded design, and also quite excitingly, a periscope camera. I honestly can't remember the last time there were so many changes in a single iPhone revision, or since the iPhone 10 rather, but it was looking like it would be the best iPhone yet. And I would say that for the most part, it has largely delivered. Let's just take a look at the hardware, and let me just say that it is absolutely gorgeous. Firstly, you can see that I went with the natural titanium color, and to be honest, I kind of regret that. Well, the sides do look absolutely incredible in the brushed metal texture that calls to mind the titanium Apple Watch models. The back, on the other hand, not only is it dominated by this massive camera hump that only gets larger each year. I mean, it's been 4 years now, surely they should have moved on to a more attractive design by now. But also, let's just say that if you were the sort of person to drive down city roads with an obnoxious exhaust popping away on your Audi RS3, I think that this take on Nardo Grey you would absolutely love. But for me, I wish that I saw the color in real life before purchasing it, because I feel that the white of this iPhone 14 Pro, for instance, would have been something that's closer to my taste. But it's still not hideous, let's say. And this is a good opportunity to compare the colors of the new phone to the old iPhone 14 Pro with its rather ostentatious chromed stainless steel on the sides. We can see that with the brushed metal on the 15, in my opinion at least, it looks a hell of a lot nicer. But what's also perhaps more important is just how much nicer the 15 is to hold over the 14. It's honestly just a night and day difference. Firstly, let's talk about weight. The iPhone 14 Pro Max was a 200 240-gram chonker. Now, I'm not saying that 240 grams is ridiculous, because what would be ridiculous is this tank phone over here, which weighs over a pound. But if you're holding this old phone for extended amounts of time, the weight would really get to you. And also, let's not talk about how it could seriously damage your nose if you were to drop it on your face. And the weight also felt quite cumbersome in your pockets. Obviously, Apple had the option to use aluminium on the old phone, which is both lighter than stainless steel and also strong enough, but obviously they wanted to differentiate the Pro version of the phone from the more standard iPhones. With the new titanium and aluminium frame though, and yes, it is a combination of the two, we get to keep the strength of the stainless steel of the 14, but it is also a useful 19 grams lighter. And let me just say that it really does feel it. And I also can't quite explain what an engineering marvel it is to have titanium on a phone like this. Jerry Rig Everything estimated that the titanium on this phone is worth $30 US for the material alone, which is an insane amount of money to spend on a phone's casing. To put it into comparison, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra's case is an estimated $37 to make the entire case, metal, glass and all. Anyway, because the weight is displaced over a larger surface area as compared to the old standard 14 Pro that I dailied last year, this actually feels a little bit lighter in the hand, despite being technically 20 grams heavier than that older, smaller phone. Secondly, the more rounded design is a massive improvement over the old one. I haven't really been shy in expressing my opinion, but my favorite iPhones to hold in the past have been the rounded ones, like the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 10, so I was a little bit dismayed when they returned to a more blocky design for the 12 series. The iPhone 6 especially, this is a 6 Plus, but you get my point. This just feels incredible in the hand. It's so light, it's so thin, and the curves just feel fantastic. With the 12 to the 14, the sides were so sharp, it kind of digs into your hand, and you really needed some sort of case to hold it comfortably over a long period of time. And while subtle, the curves on the 15 are just a massive improvement. While the 14 was very uncomfortable to hold, the 15 is actually rather pleasant, and it doesn't dig into your hand at all. I mean, just look at how comfortably it sits in my palm. It's a very happy hand indeed. And to make things even better, if we take a close look at the bezels, the new phone has a uniform 1.55mm instead of a 2.17mm bezel of the old phone. Wow, and it honestly is as subtle as it sounds. Yeah, honestly, while it is technically very impressive what they managed to achieve, as it is the thinnest uniform bezels of any phone in the world, to be fair, in real life, it is kind of not noticeable. Even side by side, it is a very subtle difference. But what is noticeable, funnily enough, is how it feels, because it does feel noticeably smaller than the old phone, despite being only a millimeter narrower. It might just be a placebo effect, but this does feel like a 6.7-inch phone that's almost narrow enough to use with one hand. Like, you know, I can just about hit the corner if I do a little shuffle. On the old phone, it's sort of the same, but the new phone feels smaller, trust me. And now let's talk about the display. It's a 6.7-inch OLED with ProMotion, and it's got a peak brightness of 2000 nits. It honestly looks absolutely incredible. But from my understanding, it's basically an identical screen to last year's phone. So if you were happy with the 14 Pro screen, you'd definitely be happy with this one. And it is honestly one of the best smartphone screens I have ever seen. So if you aren't satisfied by this, then that's pretty tough, because you literally can't do better. And while this screen is covered with the ceramic shield glass, and yes, while it is tougher than the old standard Gorilla Glass, from my experience last year where I scratch the screen quite easily, you still need a screen protector if you do want to avoid micro scratches because of the oleophobic coating on the screen, which is quite soft. Hence, you can probably see I've put quite a hastily placed screen protector on it. That's pretty bad. And of course, on the top of the phone, we have the dynamic island, which is very exciting. And while I'm still not a massive fan of it, as they could have implemented a lot of the same features if they had a dynamic notch or something like that, which would take up less vertical space. But some of the software features, like being able to see if your hotspot is on, the lovely new torch icon, and also the screen recording features, they all mean that I would rather have a dynamic island over no dynamic island, let's say. It's honestly a very slick piece of software, and it's just getting better all the time. And now we get onto another big feature. Are we ready for it? The action button. And never have I seen so much hype over a single button. I mean, really? Literally a million phones in the past have had an additional button that could be used for shortcuts or things like the camera's shutter button. From the Motorola Razr V3, I mean, do you call this an action button? To the Lumia 800, here's a camera / action button, and even the Palm Trio 680 over here. And to a million Samsung phones as well. This button has been a mainstay of the smartphone industry for literally decades now, and it's come at the expense of the old ringer switch. Now, I've had a ringer switch on literally every one of my daily smartphones since forever, basically. From my first Palm Trio, like this one over here, there's a mute switch up here, to my Palm Pre, it's got one over here, to my Pre 2, Pre 3, and every iPhone that I've had since the 5. It's honestly been a little bit of a tradition for me to have a ringer switch, and now it's gone because it's been replaced by an action button. But to be fair, I kind of don't miss it at all, because usually in the past I've just left it on mute and it's just been left there forever. But surely there's kind of space to have both a ringer switch and an action button, or at least Apple could have allowed us to assign more than one function to the button at a time, because at the moment you have to hold down on the button to activate what it was assigned to. In this current case, it's mute. And that's all you can do basically. There's no double press or triple press option. It's a little bit infuriating. And when you've got it assigned to something that's not the camera option, like I've got mute right now, you can't use the button as a shutter button for some reason. That definitely is a little bit annoying. But hey, at least this function selection screen looks pretty cool. But it is completely at odds with the rest of the UI. iOS these days is beginning to return to that awkward iOS 6 phase before the minimalist redesign, I think. We've just got a little bit of a lack of consistency. With each new update and feature implementation, we're just moving a little bit further away from the minimalist paradise that was iOS 7 in my opinion. I mean, yes, I do love my serif font on my lock screen, and yes, this option screen does look very, very fun, but the lack of design consistency feels to me as being very un-Apple. It makes me wonder if we are due for another redesign soon. Anyway, we are sidetracked right now, but the button's pretty great, but unremarkable. But I do like how with shortcuts you can use it for almost anything. For a while I had it set to locking my orientation, a bit like on a classic iPad, but then I realized that I couldn't use it as a shutter button anymore, so by default now I just change it to the camera option. But I'm sure they'll solve all of my issues in iOS 18. So now let's talk about the other big change with the iPhone 15 phones. USB-C. Now this was a move that was very popular, but I've kind of been dreading for a long time. It's because I've just been so invested in the Lightning ecosystem. I think I've counted, there are no less than 8 Lightning cables that I regularly use, from one in my car to a couple in my home office to other random ones lying around, and now I have to switch all of them to USB-C. Talk about e-waste. And I've also got tons of Lightning microphones and things like that. Anyway, there's been a bit of controversy with this in the way that despite Lightning being able to transfer at USB 3 speeds on the old iPad Pro, that they've just limited the base iPhone to merely USB 2 speeds, which is something like 10 times slower. But honestly, when was the last time that you actually transferred data to and from your phone with a cable? I honestly can't remember. probably during the pre-iOS 5 iTunes days. So for the standard iPhone 15, I really don't think that is an issue. For the Pro, on the other hand, not only is there ProRes video, which takes up tons of data, but now there's also a flat log color profile this year too. And let me tell you that I can't imagine anybody using this feature whatsoever. I'm a professional camera operator outside of YouTube, and ProRes files are massive. I would only shoot ProRes on my professional cameras if I absolutely needed to, and I would only shoot in log if I know that there would be a color grader, who is usually me, and that takes a lot of time to do. If you're going to need those massive files, you definitely will not be shooting on an iPhone. You are going to be shooting on a professional camera. So unless if you're going to use it as a sort of GoPro action camera, which it would be very good for, but what I'm saying essentially is that the far faster USB 3 speeds are basically useless for most people, so it really shouldn't be much of a controversy, and you really should be making all your buying decisions of the lack of USB 3. But what USB-C does mean though is that you can use a wide variety of accessories that you probably already have for your other devices, anything from USB hubs to SD card readers, game controllers, and even portable screens. It's all possible now. You can even use your iPhone as a gaming console by plugging in a USB display and attaching a Bluetooth controller, which I doubt anyone would actually do, but it is possible. And to round out the hardware, the speakers, as usual, are simply fantastic on the iPhone. It honestly is better than a lot of laptops I've tested, and tablets as well. I mean, just listen to this for instance. I am going to play, what's a good song? That is so loud and so crisp, and I cannot believe that it's coming from a phone. And apart from that, also hardware-wise, I still love MagSafe. MagSafe is fantastic. So yeah, the hardware is great. But let's get to the elephant in the hardware room. Durability. From multiple reports and videos, including Jerry Rig Everything's durability video, it's clear that while the titanium frame of the iPhone is indeed very strong, the back glass is less so. And while I am not denying that it definitely is weaker than the iPhone 14 Pros, as it's no longer glued in as strongly as it was previously, so it's more replaceable and affordable to do so. The thing is, glass is glass, it breaks. Just be careful with your phone, or just put it in a case, or get Apple Care. It's really not that much of a concern to me. And really, it shouldn't be for you either. It's a bit more fragile than before, fine, but it is easier to fix. It's just a compromise. You can't always have both. Let's move on. And now let's talk about the software. Now, iOS is what the iPhone experience is all about. And it's the reason why so many people buy iPhones. In a world where it's just iOS and Android, you better hope that iOS is good. And yeah, it's quite predictable really. iOS 17 on the iPhone 15 Pro is rather good. What has always impressed me is the way that it integrates with all of Apple's services and others' devices so seamlessly. I mean, yes, Android phones are getting better at this too, but I remember when I was using the Lenovo ThinkPhone, a terrific integration with my computer, but only when I emulated Windows. As a Mac user, that's not particularly helpful, because I remember the first time I was able to take a phone call from my HP touchpad tablet from my Palm Pre phone, it was simply jaw-dropping. I love it when devices work together. It's the little things like AirDrop, messages that sync between devices, AirPods that flow effortlessly from device to device, hotspot that enables almost automatically. When these things work, it feels like magic. And iOS 17 on the iPhone 15 Pro just takes that to the next level. And this year at least, it revolves around AirDrop. Firstly, there's a new feature called Name Drop. This is where you bring two iPhones together like so, and you exchange contact details instantly. It's beautiful and very elegant. Don't get me wrong, other devices have been doing this for years. I remember when there was an old ad for the Palm Pilot when the protagonists exchanged contact details via infrared as their two trains were going in opposite directions. But this implementation that Apple has done is very slick and just feels very, very Apple. And this extends to images as well. So we can share images by physically bringing two iPhones together like so. So we'll just tap here, and then I can share the image. and the image is received. It's brilliant, but once again, it also calls to mind the HP touchpad. With that, you are able to exchange websites by bringing two devices together, like so. Why did it take Apple 12 years to implement a very similar feature with also a very similar animation? Who knows? But this also segues nicely into another new feature, standby mode, that's also been long requested, by me at least, for a long time. From WebOS 2, they introduced a feature that made your phone useful when it's charging on a wireless charger like the Touchstone. It would sort of act like a smart home display, showing you different things like notifications, the time, you could have Facebook, you can have your photos and fun things like that. And finally, in iOS 17, we have this feature in standby mode. It's great, it's very slick, but come on guys, it's exciting, but definitely not new. And one of the other new iOS 17 features that I'm especially loving is the new keyboard. It is absolutely fantastic. Firstly, if you have the haptics turned on, it feels absolutely great. But what's new for this year is the revised autocorrect that will actually learn the way that you type, and gradually it learns all of your idiosyncrasies. It really is a lot better a keyboard than before. And I've also especially liked the feature where it would actually delete the text message and email verification codes so that your inbox isn't full of this random clutter. So the new features this year are great, but they don't really transform the experience. Is it better than Android 14 though? Well, the thing is, with each passing year, Android and iOS are becoming kind of more and more alike. In a world where iOS has widgets and Android has gesture-based navigation, the only big feature that I see iOS missing is split-screen multitasking. And that's a feature that I'm sure that 99% of Android users actually don't use. What's brilliant with iOS 17 is the way that it all comes together with the Apple ecosystem. And this is something that you can only really get with Apple these days. How is performance though? Despite some reports saying otherwise, this phone absolutely flies. And it shouldn't be a surprise. The benchmark figures that we are seeing from this phone are absolutely insane. In both single and multi-core tests, it gets awfully close to an M1 iMac, which means that this phone that fits in your pocket is faster than a MacBook Pro from not that long ago. I can't describe how insane this is. Whatever you throw at it, it handles, and handles with ease, rendering videos, editing photos, playing console level games. At no point have I ever felt it needing for more power. And this is a phone that I suspect will feel brisk in 3, 4, even 5 years time. However, there is a little bit of a snag, and you might have heard about this, and it is thermal throttling. So this phone runs off TSMC's new 3nm process, and it's the first phone to utilize this, and there is a bit of a problem. Although 3nm should mean that it's both more powerful and efficient, it doesn't appear to be this way, because it seems to draw up to 14 watts of power instead of the usual 10 to 11 of most former iPhones. And this means that it can get hot. And while I haven't really experienced any of the overheating issues that have been widely publicized, apart from when I'm hotspotting and charging at the same time, these reports are impossible to deny. These reports are impossible to deny because they are so widespread. And the iOS 17.0.3 update that was supposed to have fixed it doesn't seem to have quashed the issue yet. And this all seems to be because of that TSMC can't build enough chips to supply the incredible demand for the iPhone. Max Tech has reported that Apple is having to accept less efficient chips that would usually have been rejected to simply meet the demand. And that is why, despite the new, more efficient architecture, Apple needed to boost the wattage to see any meaningful performance boosts. Nonetheless, I've been playing games like Grid Autosport, Civilization, Cut the Rope 3 with no noticeable dip in performance even after relatively extended sessions. But how is battery life? Battery life has not been one of the strong points of the 14 series. In fact, on my standard size iPhone 14, not this one, I was often reaching for the charger well before midday. I remember having like early 4 o'clock starts for work and then the battery running out by 9 AM. That was simply pathetic. And I'm glad to report that battery life on the new phone is actually pretty good indeed. Of course, if you really do want to kill it before the end of the day, you obviously can, but what I'm finding is that you can get a very consistent 11 to 12 hours of on-screen time with heavy usage, including hotspot, GPS, and the odd bit of gaming before the phone runs out of battery. It's the best battery life that I've seen from a non-tank sized phone. I mean, this thing had a 22,000 milliamp battery, so I don't think that anything could compete with this. And finally, let's get to the cameras. And wow, never have I used a camera system as brilliantly versatile as this. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a professional camera operator by trade, so I am definitely quite picky. So I'm definitely not going to say that this comes close to a professional camera, especially when you blow the videos and photos onto a larger screen. But the versatility and results that you can get from something that fits in your pocket is simply remarkable. Let me show you the best pocketable camera that you can buy. This is the Ricoh GR. It costs around the same as the iPhone at around 1,600 Australian dollars. And as you can see, it is noticeably thicker. And because it does have a moving lens, as you can see, it's not exactly weatherproof at all, yet alone IP68 water resistant like the iPhone. While it does have a far larger sensor than the iPhone at APS-C, and everyone says that it's remarkable that you can fit such a sensor in such a small camera, it does come at a cost. It's got a prime lens stuck at 28mm of focal length. It is around the same as the iPhone's main sensor, just a tiny bit cropped in, maybe 1.2 times zoom. Imagine if that's the only focal length you can use. For me, it's not really a problem. As a Ricoh GR fan, quite often Ricoh users actually have two of them. You can get a Ricoh GR3 with a 28mm lens like this one, and there's another one with a 40mm lens, and quite often you'll see Ricoh GR users having one in each pocket. So to get the versatility of the wide iPhone lens and also a 1.5 times crop roughly, traditionally you'd need two of these cameras totaling around $3,000. Inside the iPhone though, which also costs around $3,000 because I got the 1TB version, you get a reasonably good 13mm lens, you get a brilliant 24mm lens, and also a brand new 120mm lens, and also a good amount of range in between them thanks to sensor crops. Let's just take a look at that briefly. We've got 13mm, we've got 24mm, we've got 48mm, and we also have 120mm. And the 120mm lens especially is fantastic. It's an f2.8 lens, which means that it's reasonably bright, but when paired with brilliant algorithms and great stabilization as well, you get some really properly stunning portrait shots. Here's an image comparison next to a Canon mirrorless camera like this one that I did earlier, and to most people, according to my Twitter at least, they look basically identical. And look at the difference in size between these two cameras. I mean, there is no comparison whatsoever, and people can be fooled by the iPhone image. The portrait mode on this year's iPhone especially puts basically every other portrait mode to shame. And while it can't do fine hairs perfectly, it does get awfully close. And unlike the Ricoh cameras, the iPhone also does incredible video as well. Even at 120mm in action mode, it looks like that you are on a dolly or a gimbal. It's honestly scary how good the stabilization is. It honestly looks like that it's been taken on a Steadicam. And let me tell you, if you want a Steadicam operator, you'd be lucky to get one for less than $1,000 a day. So that's pretty good value, I'd say. And when coupled with the ProRes and log profiles, which I've said before are useless, but let's just go with it, it is simply incredible. And I also forgot to mention that you can externally record directly onto a USB hard drive, just like with a professional camera. I'm like, it literally really feels incredible. They can have this insane power in such a relatively affordable mass market product. If you're looking for a professional camera with ProRes capabilities, you are looking at least 10 grand. This really is quite overkill, but it's good overkill, if you know what I mean. What I'm thinking right now is that, man, iPhone short film competitions are going to look incredible this year. So in conclusion, is the iPhone 15 Pro Max the worst, the most disastrous, most catastrophic iPhone ever? No. Not at all, because in my opinion, this is actually one of the best. Not only is the hardware design absolutely incredible, but it's made of exquisite materials as well, such that you find in luxury timepieces. And the software experience as well is simply second to none. It really is quite fantastic. The cameras are world class, the performance is biblical, and the battery lasts, well, not forever, it lasts a decently long time. I have never used a phone as comprehensively complete as this one. Yes, other phones might be more fun. Like, I love the Razer phone, but it really doesn't hold a candle to this. As a whole package, nothing really compares to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Yes, it's expensive, but this year at least, it really is worth it. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and on that note, toodaloo.